Hello and welcome to the React Native project course. So in this video, we will build a complete news application with the React Native and we'll be using the latest version of the React Native with latest React navigation for the navigation and React Native paper for the design purposes. So with this project, you will take your React Native skills to the whole next level. So we'll be using the libraries like the React navigation for the navigation purposes, and it's a great library. And we'll be using the React Native paper for the design purposes, and it is also a very good library. So let's start working on this project. So now I'm going to show you the demo of this application as well. So you can see here we are running this application on the Android emulator because I have Windows installed in my system. So you can see here we have the beautiful home screen. So we have the header of this application, which is built with the React Native paper. And then you can see we are using the navigations as well. This is the home screen, this is the saved screen, and then there's another screen in which we can see the details of that news. Like if I need to select any news with that, if I need to search for any news, then we need to select the filters accordingly. Like if I need the news related to the technology, the sports, the politics, if I will now hit on the refresh, then you can see we have the amazing loading bar, and after the loading completes, then the bar would have been gone. So you can see once the loading completes, so you can see we have all of this news as well. So some news have the images and some don't. So you can see some news have the images here, we have the news items here. You can see there are the beautiful cards, and then you can see if I will open this card inside that. So you can see there we have everything related to the news. We have the news content, we have the news title, we have the image of that news, and then you can see there's an amazing feature as well, which is the save. So once I will just click on this save, then you can see now this news data will be saved into your own physical device storage. So you can go back and then you can just move on into the saved. So you can see now this news will appear into your saved as well. And you can also delete this news from your save. So this is a beautiful application, and it's a type of advanced application where we are storing the news data inside the storage of your device. And there are so many things related to this project. So let's start working on this beautiful project. So welcome, and let's start working on this project. So I am into the reactnative.dev, which is the official website of the React Native, and there you will find the documentation and all other guides and the GitHub links of the React Native. So now we need to click on the get started to get started working on this project. So here you will find a screen of the setting up the development environment. So before you install or create the React Native project, you need to know that you need to install the Node.js in your system. So if you don't have Node.js installed, then you can just directly move on into the nodejs.org, which is the official website of the Node.js. And there you will find the versions like LTS version, long-term support version would also be very good to go. So we can just download this version and install. And after that, you need to install the emulator as well to run the React Native application. So like if you are on the Windows, then you can use the Android Studio to install an Android emulator. But if you're on the Mac, then what you can do, so you can install the Xcode in your Mac system, and then you will find an iOS emulator inside that. But if you do not want to use any emulators on the Windows or any Mac, then there is an option that you can scan your code with the Expo. So if you're creating a project with the Expo Go, and I will tell you some differences between the Expo Go and the React Native. So if you are creating your new React Native project with the Expo Go, then you have an option that what you can do. So you can just scan the QR code from your device. So the Expo will provide you a QR code, and then an application will be then open into your own physical device. So that is an advantage of the Expo. So if you are on the Windows, then you can use the Android Studio. So there you will find the link of the Android Studio, download now, and then you can download it according to your OS. So if you're on the Mac, then still you can download the Android Studio. But if you're on the Windows, then there is no way to download the Xcode on your system to run the iOS emulator. So you need to only run the Android Studio. So here I'm using the Windows. So I'll be showing you and I will be discussing you everything about the React Native inside the Android application, inside an Android emulator. So if you're on the Mac, then you can just move on into the Xcode. So you can just search for the Xcode, and then you can install the Xcode into your system, and there you will find an emulator with your Xcode. So now let's get started into the React Native after all these installations. So here you will find the screen of the setting up the development environment, and there are two options of creating the React Native project. The first will be the Expo Go, and second will be the React Native CLI, which is a quick start guide. So there are two options. So if you don't know about these two options, then I have the detailed video about these options. So I've created a video some around 2 to 3 months back. So you can just watch that video and you can find all of those differences which are there with the Expo and the React Native. And if I want to highlight one or two differences, like if you are just new to the React Native, then you can move on with the Expo, so which is very easy guide with the React Native. So you will find everything similar to the React. And then, but if you are just more into the native libraries as well, like inside the Android, you can use the Java code, or if you are on the iOS, then you can use some Swift or C code or anything. So you can use the React Native CLI with that. But if you are just a beginner and if you want to learn everything about the React Native with easy and steps, because the Expo is very easy to install and run, but with the React Native CLI, there are some complicated steps that you need to perform before creating the React Native application. So I have highlighted a couple of dependencies, but if you want to understand all of those differences between React Native CLI and the Expo, then you can watch that video, and I will find the link inside the top of here, inside the eye icon. So now let's start working on that. So we need to just move on into the Visual Studio Code. So if you don't have the VS Code installed, then you can just search for the VS Code once again. So you can install that VS Code, and then you can open an emulator into your system as well. So you can open your Xcode and the Android Studio, and then let's get started with that. So I've opened a folder in the VS Code with the name of the React Native News, because we are creating a news application with it. And now we need to get started, and we need to create a brand new Expo powered React Native application. So we'll be using the Expo to create the React Native app, because it is very simple and easy to follow approach. So now what do we need to do? So we need to run a command. So you can use here the npx, that should be the create-expo-app, and then you can use again the template flag, that you can use the template with that, and then you can just hit enter, and then it will ask a couple of questions about your project. So I will just zoom in this terminal. So you can see now you have options of the React Native application. The first will be with a blank. So if you will add here the blank, then it will be a simple JavaScript powered React Native application, which will also be an empty blank application. And then there's second another option, which is the TypeScript. So you can use the TypeScript, and that will be the approach we'll be using. And there's another one, which is the navigation approach. So in this project as well, we'll be just discussing everything about the React navigation as well. And there is the bare approach. If you want to just add other native code to your applications, then you can use the bare approach. But here we'll be going on with the blank, with the TypeScript version. And after that, we need to provide the name of the application. Like in this case as well, first we can remove this from there, news app, and then we can just provide the news app here. So we have the news app, and then we need to hit enter, and then you can see the new React Native application would be then created within very few moments. So you just need to wait for a couple of moments, and then let's get started after the app has been created. So the new Expo app has been created. So you can see there is the project. So now what do we need to do? So we need to move on into the news app. So what we can do, so we can just move on into this directory, and there you will see there are a couple of directories inside that. The first will be the assets folder, which contains some images, the icons, the splash icons, and so many things related to the assets like the images. And then you will find another folder with the node modules, which contains some crucial packages for the React Native applications to perform the things inside the backend. And after that, we have the git ignore files. So inside this folder, so inside this file, what it will do, so once we'll publish our app to the GitHub, so it will just exclude these things from our project directory to publish it to the GitHub, because the node modules folder, because if we publish the node modules folder, then this folder is around 100 to 120 MB. So we don't want to publish it to the GitHub. And after that, we don't want to publish the Expo folder, the dist folder when we make our app to the production. And there are so many things that we don't need to publish to the GitHub. So if you find any file that you do not need to publish, then you can just mention it here. And after that, there's the app.json file, which contains some crucial information about our application inside that. And after that, we have the app.tsx with that. So if you don't know about the TSX inside that, so the TSX is just like a JSX, like we do inside the React. So there are the file extensions of the JSX, but here with using the TypeScript, we change the extensions to the TSX. And after that, we have the Babel config file. So it contains some information about our application, like how to perform a clean code inside any project. And after that, we have the package.json file, which contains some information about our application, about the name of the application, the version of this application, the main application app entry file. And then we have here the scripts of starting in the development mode, starting in directly into the Android, into the iOS, into the web. And there are some couple of dependencies like the Expo status bar, the React DOM, React Native web. So these are the couple of dependencies, and there are some development dependencies as well. So these dependencies will not be included inside the final bundle of this application. So they are just for the development purposes. So after that, we have the private repository as the true. So after that, we have the tsconfig file, which contains some TypeScript configurations for this application because we need some strict code as well inside that. And after that, now we can move on into the app.tsx. And after that, now what do we need to do? So here you can see inside the app.tsx, which is the main file of our application. So here the first thing is we are importing something from the expo status bar, which is just the status bar of any application. And then we are importing the style sheet, text, and the view from the React Native. So first thing, before just going on into the function app, we can just start this application. So we can start this application with the npm start. So after starting this application, then you need to move on into the Android Studio, and then you need to open the Android emulator. So I have already opened the Android emulator here. So here you can see now here is my Android emulator inside that. So we can just shift that to here. And after that, you can see there are some couple of commands. Like here you can see the first thing which I mentioned earlier was the QR code with the expo generates. Like if you want to run this application inside your physical device, then what you need to do? So you need to install the Expo Go in your system. And after that, there is an option to scan this. So you can just scan this QR code. But before scanning that, you need to know that you need to be on the same network before scanning that. And after you will scan this, then this application would be then running inside your own physical device. So that's a great advantage of the React Native with that. And after that, now we can just move on into this. So here you can see there are a couple of commands. So we can press A to open this application into the Android, W for the web, and these are for the debugger, reload, and the toggle menu, and there are so many things with that. So we can just click A, and then you will see there is an option of the opening and Android. So here you can see there are opening on Expo, this is the IP, and there is the device. So here you can see we have the Pixel 6 Pro. And after that, we have an option to upgrade. So we don't need to upgrade as of now. So here you can see now the application is being compiled here. So now the bundle is being completed. So here you can see now on the device. Now you can see now the device is working fine. So we can see this text over here. Open up the app.tsx to start working on your application. So here you can see here we have this text. So once we will change anything inside that, like we change here the hello world. So there you will see the hello world inside that. So once I will save this file, and then once I will just click on the R for the reloading. So here you can see now the application will reload, and then you will see the hello world over here. So this is how we can just create the brand new React Native application. And now what do we need to do? So we need to understand the code of the function app. So first we are rendering the view. So the view is just like a div, like inside the HTML web pages, we have a div, which is just a container. So the view is just a container. So it is just wrapping the elements around it. And there are some text elements here. So inside the text, we are rendering some strings like the hello world. So inside the React Native, so you cannot directly refer the text inside that. So if you will just remove the text from here, and then you can add some text like the hello world here. Like inside the web, it works, but inside the mobile devices, it does not work because this is not defined inside the React Native. And there you can see we have an error of the text strings must be rendered within a text component. So if you are rendering some text, then you need to use the text from the React Native or any other library or any other design library that you want. So you can use the text to render some text inside your application. So these are some rules of the React Native, and I've mentioned all of these rules inside my React Native video. So I've added the link inside the description to that video as well. So here you can see we discussed about the status bar. We have the style equals to the auto. It is providing some styles to the status bar. Like here you can see now the status bar is white. Then we can just change the color of the status bar as well. So we can have the dark. I think it won't affect too much because now it is depending on the Android state. So we can move on, and then we can just click on the inverted, and then you can see now there is nothing inside the status bar. So the colors are inverted, and then we can move on. We can just click again on the auto as well because that will be defined like the theme of the application. If the theme is the dark mode, then it will be enabled for the dark mode. So status bar is just like a color of your status bar inside that. And there are some more couple of props that you can use, the animated, the background color. So you can give the background color of something like green as well. So then you will see now we have the background color of the green. So the status bar provides all of those styles with that. And these are just the fundamental concepts of the React Native. So after the function app, now we can move on into the styles. So we are generating the styles after the app function. This is just a CSS style sheet. Like the React Native does not support CSS, and it will not because CSS works on the web browsers, on the web pages. But it generates some JavaScript styles into it. Like here we have the style sheet method, like the style sheet is defined inside the React Native. So we are just creating some style subjects with it. So these are just the styles. Like inside the React as well, we have the style prop for every element. So we are giving the styles of the container property with that. So it is just like a simple object containing the styles of the CSS. So it is just getting some types. So here we have the container, we are providing the flex equals to the one, the background color, align items, justify content. And you need to know that every view inside the React Native has the by default display property equals to the flex and the flex direction into the column. So unlike in the web, so the web doesn't have the by default property. So the web has by default property of like block, but here inside the React Native, inside the native fonts, so the default display property is the flex and the flex direction is the column for the view. So this is all about the app.tsx inside that. So now we have discussed everything about the React Native inside this initial video. And now we need to move on into the major project, which is the news project. So right now we have just the app.tsx, and now we'll be modifying everything inside this React Native project to create the news application with the React Native. So let's get started for that. So now before moving on into the news application, I want to show you the demo of this application once again. So here you can see we have this home screen, and inside that we have some styling features as well. So for the styling, we have the library which is used for the React Native. So inside the React.js, we have the library of the Material UI, which is the most used library. And inside the React Native, there is very similar library with the Material UI, which is the React Native paper, which uses the material designed by Google features inside that. Like here we are using some filters with the chips inside that. We have this home screen, and you can see now this screen is looking like the previous Google versions. So now this is very similar to the Google screens. So we are using the React Native paper for the design purposes inside this application. And the second thing that I want to discuss is we are using the navigation features as well inside this application. So React Native, inside the default React Native package, there is no support for the navigation. So for the navigation, we need another library, which is the React Native navigation. So I want to show you the link as well with that. So we have the React Native and the navigation with that. So we are using this library for the React Native navigation. So if we open this, then you can see it is the mostly used routing and navigation for the Expo and the React Native applications. And this is the only React Native navigation package which is officially supported by the React Native. So we can just click on the read docs. And there you will see we have the getting started page, and we have some documentation related to it. So we need to use these two libraries. The first will be the React navigation for the navigation inside the React Native. And then we need to use the React Native paper, which is also an official library, which is supported by a huge community. So we can use these two packages to make our application look and feel better. So now what do we need to do? So first we'll be starting on with the React navigation. So here we have the getting started screen. So we have some fundamentals, we have some prerequisites. So we need the React Native, we need the main concepts of the React Native, we need the knowledge of the React Native, we need some knowledge of the hooks, we need the knowledge of the context. And there we have some minimum requirement of the React Native, like this is okay because we are using greater than 0.63 version. We have the Expo, we have the TypeScript support, and then we have finally the installation step. So we need to install few dependencies with the React Native navigation. So first let's start with this. So we can just click on the copy. We can paste that into your application. So we can create another terminal with that, cd into the news application. And I'm just closing the development React Native application as of now, because I wanted to just show you the screen and the navigation features with that. So we can just close this as of now, and then we can just open our application into it. So we can move on into this in this terminal, and again we can just click on the A. So this will be opened inside our application. So now you can see now the bundle is complete. We are seeing the hello. So now we need to move on into the new terminal, and here we can just paste that command here, like the npm install the React navigation native. And this is just a core folder which contains some core items. And for using the navigation, we need few more dependencies for using the navigation, because in this application we'll be using a couple of navigation features, like the screen to screen navigation and the tabs navigation. So there are two navigations that we'll be using. So now first let's install this core directory, which is the React navigation native. And after that, you can say installing the dependencies in an Expo managed project. So we are using the React Native for an Expo. So we need to install these packages as well. And these are just the React Native screens. So these are just the screen animations. And after that, we have the safe area context. So the safe area context is just like a library which provides you some safe area. Like if you own or if you know about the iPhone 10, like there is some notch devices inside that. So with the notch, the React Native safe area context, what it does, so it identifies the notch area and it does not render the content into it. So that is the use of the React Native safe area context. So we can just click on the copy. We can just move on again and then we can just paste that over here. We can again, I think, hit on the enter. So these packages will be then installed. And after that into the Bear React Native project. So if you are using the Bear, then you can install these packages. And if you're on the Yarn, then you can select the Yarn inside that. And now what do we need to do? So here we have this navigation container, which is the topmost container inside the React Navigation Native, inside the official website of the React Native Navigation. So now these docs are very familiar. So if you will just read about this into the fundamentals, then you will understand everything about the React Navigation. But in this project as well, so whatever we'll be using, I will be giving the explanation with that. So here you can see we have the hello React navigation. So like you can see, this is very simple language. Like in a web browser, we can link to a multiple pages with the anchor tag. Like we provide the anchor tags in the web pages and then we provide the ref prop inside that for a link. And then once the user click on that link, then the URL is being pushed into the browser history stack. So whenever we click on the link, then the page refreshes and it moves on into the next link page. But once the user presses the back button, then again the user sees the previous item with that. So that's how the stack works. So the stack is just like a stack navigation. So in this project, we'll be using the stack and the tab based navigation. So the stack is very similar, like we push and pop the items into the stack. So it's a type of data structure and I think we all know about that, right? So the stack navigator library for the React navigation is very familiar to the web. Like we provide the anchor in the web, the user clicks on it, the user move on to a different page. And once the user click on the back, then we see the previous page inside that. So it is same with the React Native navigation. So for the stack navigator inside the React Native, we again need to install few dependencies. Like first will be the npm install React Navigation Native Stack. So we need to just copy and then we need to paste it here. So this dependency will be then used. And after that, we have some functions inside that. Like here we have the create native stack navigator. So this stack navigator returns two properties, the screen and the navigator. So it provides you the navigator and the screen. Like here you can see, we first we give the reference to the stack variable inside the stack, inside the create stack navigator. And this instance variable, so this referred variable creates a navigator, and then inside the navigator, it creates a screen. So that's how we use the screens inside that. And it is very easy to use. So I'm going to show you everything about the stack navigator and the bottom tabs navigation as well. So let's start with it. So we can just keep this page open because we need some support as well from this. So now what we can do, so we can move on into the app tsx. So here we don't need to render the status bar and this, we don't need to render the style as of now. So we can just remove everything from there. And after that, we do not need the style sheet object as well. So we don't need any import as well with that. So here we have just empty return statement, or we have the empty default function of the app. And now what do we need to do? So first I'm going to create a new folder, which will be a navigation. So inside this folder, we'll be creating a navigation logics and the navigation files. And after that, I'm going to create another folder, which will be a components, which will provide a handy components. And after that, we need to create another folder, which will be equals to the screens. So in this folder, we'll be managing all of the screens of this application. So first we need to move on into the navigation, and here we need to create a new file, which is the navigator.tsx. So we have the navigator.tsx file. And after that, the first thing is that we need to do, so we need to create a navigator with that. Like here you can see, like inside the navigation container, we write the navigation code. So this is a topmost container for every navigation inside the React Native. So we have the navigation container. So it will be imported from the React Navigation -native. So we can first import something from the React Navigation native. And this will be equals to a navigation container. So this will be a prop. And after that, we need to just create a function, like as we do inside the normal React code. We need to create a component app navigator. So we have this function, and after that, we need to just export this function as a default export as well. So we have the export default of this app navigator. And after that, we need to return some code inside that. So first we need to return a navigation container that we have just imported. So inside that, now we need to just render the elements like the screens inside that. So first we need to just import something again from the stack navigator. So for now, we'll be using the stack navigator, and after we write the code for the stack, then we'll be moving on with the bottom tabs. So first we can just provide a variable, like we can give this stack that should be equals to a create stack navigator. So we have the create native stack navigator, which will be imported from the React navigation dash native stack. And after that, that would be equals to the stack. So here, if you don't want to import here directly the stack, so stack is just an object which contains some properties, and their properties contain so many items inside that. So you can remove and you can destructure the values from it, like the group. Like the group is used for just providing a container for the group. We have the navigator, we have the screen. So we can just directly use the stack, and it is very easy to understand as well. So now what do we need to do? So here we need to use the stack, and then we need to use the dot navigator property of the stack. So once we add the navigation inside that, we use the stack.navigator. And inside that, we have few options as well, like we have the children, we have the ID, we have the initial route name to provide the initial route, and so many things, which we'll see later. And after that, inside that, we can use the stack.screen. And from here, we are registering a screen inside that. And there is a required prop, which will be the name. So we need to provide the name of the screen as well. Like here, we can provide the name of the home screen. So here we have the home screen, and after that we need to provide the component as well inside that. So here we need to provide the component. So as of now, we can just provide the function, like we can have the home screen. So that will be again a function inside that. So we'll be returning just a JSX code inside that. And after that, we can provide the home screen to the component inside that. So this is how we can register a screen inside the React Native. First, all of the navigation code should contain inside the navigation container. After that, we provided the navigator, which is just used to just provide the parent navigator inside that, like a stack navigator. Like inside the stack navigator only, we need to provide all of those screens, like we have the stack navigator. And after that, we have first provided a first screen, which is the name equals to the home screen. We have the component, which is equals to the home screen. And after that, I want to show you one more thing. Like if we provide some content inside that, like we provide here a view from the React Native, so we can import the view as well, like import the view from the React Native. So view would be a named export. So here we have the view, and after that we can import the text from it as well. Like here we have the text again from the React Native. So we need to import the text as well. So here we have the view and the text, and then we can just render here the home inside that. So here we have the home. And after that, if we just move on, and then if we run this app navigator function inside the app, so we can remove everything from it. And here we can just return here some code, like we can return here the app navigator inside that. So here we have the app navigator with that. So now what we are doing, so inside the default function app, we are returning the app navigator, and this code will move on into the app navigator, and then it will just use the app navigator function, and there it will find the navigation container, and inside that it will find the stack, and inside the stack the first element will be the screen. Then it will register the screen into your application, and then it will render the component of the screen into the home screen. So that is the process of the React navigation. And now we can just move on into the home screen. So here we are rendering the text of the home. So if we just move on, if we just save, I think we have some error inside that. So I think first we can refresh this app, so we can reload the app. So unable to resolve React navigation native from navigator.tsx. So I think we can just run the npm install once again to check if that works or not. So the npmi works, and now we can move on into the npm scripts, or we can just directly run the npm start, or we can just run the npm android directly. So it will be directly opened into the Android. So I think we need to run the npm run Android. So now it will be running into the Android. So here the app is now working. So here you can see the npm high has fixed all of those issues. So now you can see now inside this application we have the home screen. So here in the top you can see we have the header, and we have the by default header inside that, and inside the header we have the home. So this home screen is the name of the screen, and this home is the content of the home screen. So that's how the navigation works. So congratulations on creating your first navigation inside your React Native. So after that, now what we can do, so here we are rendering the home screen, and then we have the name of the home screen. So we can just provide another things, like we can provide initial params, initial listeners options, and in the options you will find a couple of list of the options. Like we can have the header color, like we have the header. So we have here the header background, header back title, header blur effect, and so many properties, and these are just design properties that you want. So you can provide these properties inside that, and even you can just hide the navigation, or even you can hide the header as well. Like you can have the header visible, I think. So I think, so here you can see we have the header shown properties. So we can click on the header shown, and then we can just click on the false. So then you can see now there won't be any header inside this. So then you can see on the top of your screen, you have here the home. So that's how it works. So you can provide so many options with that. So I'm going to remove all of those options. So now we need to move on with the default. So here we have the header of the home screen, and then we can also register another screen as well, like copy and paste. And then the another screen would be the news overview. Like we have the news overview. And inside this news overview, we need to create another component. So we can move on inside the components, and then we can create the components of the news overview. We can have the tsx, and after that we can run the rnfes. So the rnfes is a prop available with the React Native ES7 ES6 imports. So we have this extension inside the Visual Studio Code, which contains so many items and some boilerplate code for the React and the React Native. So with that, you can use this package, and then like this, like once I will run the rnfes, once I will click on this, then you can see it will auto generate the boilerplate code for the React Native application. So that's how we can use this. So we have the news overview. Now we can move on into this. We need to provide the component of the news overview. So if we save, if we move on into the application, so if we do not provide anything inside the stack navigator, so the first screen will be then rendered as the initial screen. But if we provide the prop of the initial route name, and then we give the initial route name of the news overview like this, so then you will see now the news overview screen would be then rendered here. We can reload once again. So you can see initially the news overview screen will be then rendered. So initial route just provide an initial route inside the stack navigator. So that's how we can just create the screens inside the stack navigator. We'll be showing you that how to pass from one screen between the two screens. So that's it for the stack navigator. And after that, we need the bottom tabs navigation as well. So now you can see inside the guides, you can have the tab navigation. So the tab navigation allows you to have some bottom tabs navigation as well. Like inside the bottom tabs, inside any application, we have some tabs, like you can see we have the home, settings, and we have so many tabs within any application, like even in the Instagram or Twitter, we have the bottom tabs. So now let's start with the tab navigation. So for the tab navigation, again, we need to install this library with the React Navigation /bottom tabs. So we can click on the copy, we can create another terminal, we can move on into the news app, and then we can paste this here. So now this React Navigation bottom tabs would be then installed within very few moments. And after that, we can see a minimal example once again based on the tab navigation. So here what we are doing is, first, this code has the function of the home screen as we have defined inside our application as well. And we have the settings screen. So what we are doing inside that, so we have the navigation container, and inside that we are providing the tab navigator with the screen 1 equals to the home. We have the screen 2 equals to the settings. So this will work same. So if we provide this code to this application, so the application would be then performed like there would be two tabs. The first will be here, the second would be here, and for the whole application, the tabs would be visible. So that's how the tab navigation works. So we have the tab screen. So it is same like the stack as well. Like we are providing the create bottom tabs navigator, and in the stack, we have the create native stack navigator. And now inside that, we are providing the navigator, then the screen. So same like we provided inside the stack. So what do we need to do? So here inside this application, the functionality would be different. So what we'll be having, I'll be showing you inside the paint. So here inside this application, we can move on into the home. So suppose this is our device. Okay. So inside that, first there will be some header of this application, like, and don't judge me on my design basis because my design is always too poor. So first we have this header inside that. So header would be a little small. And after that, now what we'll be having, so on the home screen, we'll be having two tabs. The first will be of the home. The second would be equals to, and second would be of, I think, the save tabs. So we will be having the home and the saved inside that. And after that, we'll be having another screen. So here, suppose we have this, again, a new phone. And after that, we can just provide the header once again on the top. So here we have this header. And after that, what we'll be having is, suppose inside this screen, we have some news. Like now, this is a news container. And again, this is a news container. And there will be so many news containers inside that. And once we will just click any of the news container, so once any of this news container will be clicked, so then we'll be showing the details of this news inside this tab, inside this screen. So this is equals to the news overview screen, and this is the home screen. So in this screen, so in this application, there will be only two screens. The first will be the home. Second, there will be the news overview, and inside the overview, then we will render the content of the screen, like we will be having the image, then we'll be having the description of the text, like here we'll be having the text, there will be having a super long description, and then we'll be having the button of the save as well. So once we will just click on the save button, so then we'll be moved on to the save tabs, like this is the home, this is the saved, and all saved news would be then appeared inside the saved. So that will be the functionality. So for this functionality, what do we need to do is, first there will be the home screen, and inside this home screen we'll be having the tabs. So only in this home screen we'll be having the tabs, and inside this screen we won't be having any tabs. So what do we need to do? So suppose this is a home screen. So after that, now what do we need to do? So inside this function, inside this component, we'll be declaring the bottom tabs, because we need the bottom tabs only in the home. So that will be the functionality. So now the bottom tabs is now imported, and now we can just move on into this component. So after this tag, then we can have the const, we can have the bottom tabs, like we have the just the tab that should be equals to, we have the create bottom tabs navigator. So with that, we have given the reference to this tab variable, and after that what we'll be doing is we'll be removing everything from there. So here we have this return statement inside that, and inside this return statement what we'll be doing is, first we'll be having the tab dot navigator, and here we don't need the navigation container because we have already defined inside the navigator. So here we need the tab dot navigator, and after that we need to register the screen, like tab dot screen. So this tab will be having the screen, will be having the name of the screen that should be equals to the home, like this would be the home, and we can define a component. Like initially we can define any component like this, like we can have here the text, but it will give you an error, but we will just minimize that error as of now. So we'll have the text of the home with that. So we have the screen, and after that we can create another tab for the saved. So I think we haven't closed the stack, so we can close this and we can paste it over here, and the name of the screen will be equals to, we can give the name of the saved. So here we have the saved, the component would be equals to the saved. So if we save, if we move on into the application, so now you will see now our screen is there. So now we have the home screen, and then you can see now inside the bottom we have the tabs. First will be equals to the home, and then we have here the saved. So now we have these two tabs over here, we have the home and then we have the saved, and inside that we can see, once we'll just click on the save, then we'll be moved on into the saved, and once we'll just click on the home, then we'll be moved on into the home. So that's how we can just define everything inside that. So now we have just defined the navigation structure of our application, and now what we can do is we can provide the components as well. Like first we'll be having the components that should be equals to, we can have the home.tsx, and inside that again we can run the RNFES for the default setup, and same for the saved, like we have the saved.tsx, and inside that again we can run the RNFES for the initial setup, and we can move on into the navigator. The component would be equals to, we can provide the home, we have the home, and we can move on into this, and we can remove this text over here, we can give this saved. So now we have two components. So if we save, if we move on into the application, then you can see if I will now refresh again, so now our app looks like this. So first we have here the news overview. I think we have given the initial route name, so we can remove the initial route name as of now, we can remove this. And if we just move on into the application once again, and I think this device is getting some cache memory, so we need to reload every time we use it. So once we will reload again, then you can see we have the home screen, here we have the home, and once we will move on into the saved, then you can see now we are into the saved. And here you can see now we are getting the home screen and the saved once again. So inside the navigator, again we have a prop, like I think we have the prop of remove this area of the header. So I think inside this screen options, we can get this prop, like we have the header shown again, that should be equals to the false. So it will remove the header of the navigator. So if we save, then you can see we have here the home, and we have here this saved. Inside that, I think we need to provide it to the saved. So I think we need to do this inside this stack screen. So here we have the stack inside that. So inside this, we can use the options. So we have the options, and then we can use the header shown. we have the property of the header shown, that should be equals to the false. So here we have the property of the header shown to the false. So if we save, if we again move on into the application, so once we will just click on the home, then you can see now we enter the home page. Once we will just click on the saved, so now we enter the saved page as well. So everything is working perfectly fine. So now the routing functionality in this application has been completed. And now the next part that we need to focus on is definitely on the design. So now you can see now the design is not looking good. So we need to work on the design, and then we'll be rendering the news list inside that. So first, for the design, we can move on into the Chrome once again. And then as we discussed earlier, that we need to install a library, which is a React Native paper. So we can just search for the React Native paper. And here you can see this is this library, React Native paper, and then we can just move into this. So here, this is an amazing library for the design into the React Native applications. So here you can see, you can just find the demos, you can just find the weekly downloads, you can find the stars on the GitHub, number of commits, and this is community supported as well. So you can find this design library inside that. So you can just move on into the docs, and there you will find the official documentation of this library. So here you can see we have the screens of the get started and the GitHub. So we can click on the get started, and there if you're on the yarn, then you can use the yarn at React Native paper. But if you're on the npm, then you can use this package. So we can move on into the application. Again, we can move on into the terminal. We can paste that command over here. But if you're on the iOS, then you need to add an additional package, which is the npx pod install. So you need to install that, because for the internal modifications for the iOS, this package is required. And then for the icons as well, we need to install another library, which is the React Native vector icons. So we can copy that, and then again we can move on into this application. We can use the npm I, and then we can just paste that icon over here, and make sure we have installed the React Native safe area context. So we have already did this inside the navigation, so we need this here as well. So I think we have defined the home, news overview, and the saved inside a wrong directory. So they need to be added inside the screens, because these three are the screens. So we can move on into the screens. We can just paste them here, and then there will be a pop-up for the update imports. So you need to click on the yes. So the updates will be then imported. So here you can see, I think the news overview and the save will get an error. So we can remove that. We can again import that from their respective location. So we have the news overview, we have this saved. And now what do we need to do? So our application is running once again. So we need to move on into the home screen. So here we have the home screen, and here we need to define some design layout first. So what do we need to do? So here we have the first view. We can just provide some styles to the view as well. Like here we have the container. So we have the container would be having the styles of, we can have here the flex property that should be equals to the 1. So we have the style of the flex. And now what do we need to do? So here we have here the view. We can give here the style that should be equals to the styles dot container. So we have the container property, and inside that, what do we need to do? So this view has a default style of the flex, and flex direction equals to the column. Then we can just provide the app bar from the React Native paper. So we can move on into the React Native paper, and then we can just search for the app bar. So here you can see this is a type of app bar, which is a header of this application. So we can define the header with that. So the app bar has some properties, like it has the header, and then it has the content, and it has the title, and so many things with it. So we can move on, and we can define the app bar here. So we can remove this text. We can use the app bar from React Native paper, and then we can just wrap this component over here. And after that, we need to import a specific property from the app bar, and that is equals to the header. So we need the header from the app bar. So after that, what do we need to do? So here as well, we need to close it with the header, and inside this, what do we need to do? So I think it needs to be this. So after this header, then we'll be having the content of the app bar. So we have the app bar dot, we have the content, and inside this content, we'll be having we can have here the title. Like first we'll be having the title property, and that should be equals to, we can give the title that should be equals to, we can give any title like this is a home screen. So we can use the home with that. So if we save, if we move on into the application, so I think again we are getting this error, or we can restart the server once again. So with the npm run android, so the npm run android would open this directly on the android, and we can click on the no, because we don't want to update as of now, and then we can reload the application. And then you can see once the bundle completes, we will see it inside this application. So here you can see now we have this home. So here you can see now we are just displaying the home inside that. And we now need to remove this header, the by default header of the React Native navigation. So we can move on into the navigation, And here as well inside this stack screen, so we can have a, I think we can move on into this one tab navigator. We can provide here the option prop, like we have the screen options that should be equals to the header shown, that should be equals to the false. So if we save, if we move on into the applications, so now you can see now we have the home which is available from the React Native paper. So after this app bar is completed, I want to introduce you into the theming concept of the React Native. So the theming is a concept in which we can provide the theme to our application. So the theming can contain the modes like the light mode, the dark mode, and so many things like the colors, that what colors do we need, we have the roundness, we have so many things like we have the properties of the themes. So now what do we need to do? So for the theming, we need to just wrap the whole app component into the paper provider, which is provided by the React Native paper. So first let's do that. So we can import something from React Native paper. And after that, that should be equals to the provider. So here we have this provider, and after that we need to wrap the whole app component with the provider inside that. So we can use that provider, and the provider would wrap the app navigator with that, and the app navigator has all of those themes inside that. And now the next, so you can accept the theme properties here, like you can use the import use theme from the React Native paper, and then you can use it inside any of the component. And now another thing that I want to introduce you, so you can provide your own custom theme as well. Like here we have the colors inside that. So if you will scroll down, then you can see you can define your own theme here. Like first you need to override the default theme, and then you can provide your own properties of the theme, and then you have the colors. Like you have the my own color property. So like now you can see we have the dynamic theme colors inside that. So you can use the dark mode, the light mode. So there are so many things with that. So you can use the dark mode, and then you can just copy that colors object inside that. So you can just copy that colors object, and then you can move on into this application. And what you can do, so first you can just use the theme property here, like we have the const theme equals to this theme. So what you can do, you can just paste that here. We have the default theme, and you need to import the default theme from the React Native paper. So again, you can add the import. We have here the default theme. You have here the default theme with that, and after that we have the default theme, so we don't need any own property as of now. So we can just customize our own object. So in the colors, we can provide the colors here. So the colors are defined here. So what you can do, so you can just use that colors over here. Like now you can see now we have these colors. So we can remove this as of now. So this will be okay. So now you can see now we have the default theme inside our application. And now what do we need to do? So here to provide this theme to whole application, we need to do this inside the provider, like we do inside the Redux inside the React.js. So that's how we can use this. So we have the theme that should be equals to the theme variable, the theme object. So if we save, if we move on into the application, then you can see now the theme of the application has been changed. So now you can see now this is looking beautiful. So now we have the home, and then we can just customize this app according to our preference. So this is how we can use the theming. And now what do we need to do? And now we can just move on into the main home screen. So here we have the home screen. We are rendering the header. So now after the header, now we need to render here some filters to search for the news. So for searching for the news, then we need to add the filters as well. So for using the filters, what we can do is we can first move on, and then we can just define here some stylings for that. Like here, we'll be having the view again for the styling. So here we have the view, and inside this view, what we'll be having is first we can provide here the filters container. So we have the filters, and it will be an object. And inside this object, what we'll be having is we'll be having the, I think we'll be having the flex direction that should be equals to the row. So the default flex direction is the column inside this React Native. So we have here the flex direction to the row, and then we can use the flex wrap to the wrap, because we need to wrap the items if the space becomes too less. We have here the wrap property, and then we can use the margin from vertical. So we can use the margin from vertical. It means margin from the top and the bottom. So we can give the margin vertical to the 10 pixels inside that. So we have the filters container. We can give the styles that should be equals to, we have the styles object dot, we have the filters container. So after we have defined the container inside that, then we can just move on, and then we can just use the chips inside the React Native paper. So the chips are like the filters that we can use. So here you can see, you will find that chip inside the side navigation. So here you can see this is a chip. So chip is used to display the entities in the small boxes. So you can use this chips inside that. So now what do we need to do? So you can just move on, and you can see the usage as well inside that. So here you can see we have the simple, we can select any chip, and then that chip would be unselected, and then we can unselect it as well once we will just click on that again. So that is the chip. So what do we need to do? So we can just move on and then we can just define the chip as well. But before that, we need to specify the categories. So for the categories, now I want to introduce you to the API of the news as well. So we'll be using the news API with that. So for the API, we can just move on into the news. So here we have the open source news data, like the newsdata.io. So this is a website of the newsdata.io, which provides the API for displaying all of those news inside that. So it gets news from multiple operators and then it renders that into this API. So we can just get all the news data from this newsdata.io. So first you need to just log in and then you need to get the API key from that. And after that, what you need to do? So you can just get access to the API. So first what I'll be doing is now I'll be moving on to my private browser. So here we have the newsdata.io/dashboard. So here you will find that API key over here. So here you can see now we have this Gmail and the password, and then you can see now we have here the topic or the keywords. So we can just have here the topic. We can click on the advanced search and then you will see there will be some filters. So you can see we have the country filter, we have the category, we have the language, and we can just click on the apply and then we get all of the news from there. So now we don't have any filter applied. So that's why we are getting all of those news. So you can see inside the categories. So we can just specify few categories inside this application, like in which I would be interested in. That should be equals to, we can give the const, we can have the categories. That should be equals to an array of the string. So inside the string, the first would be equals to, we can give the technology. And after that, the second filter would be, we can give it the sports. And then the third filter that we need will be equals to the politics. And then the fourth filter would be equals to, we can give the health. We have here, and then we can also give here, provide here the filter for the business. So here we have the 5 filters inside the categories. So make sure these categories are there inside this category drop down. So you can just get anything from there and you can get their signs as well. So these are the categories that you can use. So now what do we need to do? So we need to get the API key and the URL as well. So like now you can see this is my API key, and do not try with my API key because I'll be changing this key after this video has been recorded. So what you can do, so you can just have here the URL. So first you need to log in and then you need to move on into the dashboard. Then you can see the query URL. So you need to copy this and then you need to paste this inside our application. So first what I will be doing is now first we need to just get the API key from there. So first I'll be storing the API key like const API key. That would be equals to this key. And after that, we can just provide the URL after the filters has been submitted. So we can just keep this as it is because now we want to work on the filters first. We want to work on the chips. So now what do we need to do? So here inside this view, we can have here the expressions. And as we do inside the React.js, we add here the loop with the map. So map returns an array. So it will return the list items from the categories. And then we'll be rendering the chips. So we have the categories dot map, and for each category, so we have the category. Like we can use the cat, and after that what we'll be doing is we'll be rendering the chip from the React Native paper. Like here we have the chip. So we can move on into the React Native paper. We can use the chip from there. So we have the chip, and then we can just provide the customizations as well. So this should be the chip. And after that we have here, first we need to provide the key. That should be equal to the category itself. And then we can use the mode as well. So the mode would be equal to the outline. So the outline would be good looking. So we can have the mode, and then we can have some styling as well. So if you want to provide the styling, then you can again provide the styling here. Like we have the chip item, and inside this chip item, now what you can do, so you can just provide the margin from the horizontal. That should be equals to, we can give the 5. We can give the margin from the vertical. That should be equals to the 5. So that should be okay, I think. So we can give this style. That should be equals to, we can do the styles dot chip item. And after that, now what we'll be doing is we need to provide the text style as well. So we can use the text style. So that would be, so this would be equals to an object. So we'll be having the font weight. So we can give the font weight. That should be equals to the 400 would be good enough. And then we can use the color. That should be equals to the white. And then we can also provide another property which would be the padding. We can give the padding of 1 or 2 something. So 1 would be okay for the padding. So here we have this chip, and now we need to wrap the text inside this chip. So this chip will not be the auto closing components. So we need to wrap the category inside this chip. Like the category would be equals to CAT that we are looping through, that we are iterating through. So so here we have the category. And after that, now what do we need to do? So here we need to provide some prop as the selected. So the selected, so like once the chip would be selected, so the selected would be equals to the true. So this will give us all of the selected filters from the chips. So we can have the selected, and for that we will be having some conditions as well. So with the selected, it would be giving us the results like how many chips are selected, and then we can get their data according to the chips. So here we have the chip, and then we can use another property, which is the select overlay, which is the show selected overlay, and it will be equals to the true. And after that, now what do we need to do? So we need to use the state inside that. So I think we can use another useState object in which we can just store all of those selected categories. So here we have the const, we can have the useState that should be equals to, we can have the categories, or we can just provide here the initial setup of the useState snippet. So there would be equals to, we can have the selected categories, and set selected categories that should be equals to, we can give the array of the empty values. So we have the array, then we need to import the useState as well. So here we have the selected categories. So what we'll be doing, so we'll be having the selected that should be equals to, first we will check like selected categories dot map, or like we can use the dot find. And with the find, what we can do, so we can have here the category once again, we can have the C, and after that what we'll be doing, if the category equals to the C, then what do we need to do? Then the selected would be equals to the true. So then the selected would be equals to the true, or the selected would be equals to the false. Here we have the simple logic for the selected as well. So the selected would be equals to, so if we find the selected categories, so if this is already included inside the selected categories, so then that should be equals to the true, else it would be equals to the false. But how would we find that if it is already inside the selected categories? Because we haven't saved yet. So we can provide here another property, which is the onPress. So the onPress is there. So inside the onPress, what we'll be doing is we will be rendering a function that should be equals to, we can have the handle select. So we can have the handle select category, and that should be equals to a function, and there will be passing the category itself. So from this onPress, we'll be saving this inside the selected categories, and the selected would render a condition like selected categories dot find. If this chip is being found inside the selected categories, then that should be equals to the true. Then this chip would be then selected, or it would be not be selected. So we can move on into the handle select. So we can define that function over here. So we can have the const, we can have the handle select. That should be equals to a function in which we will get this category value, and the value would be equals to of type of the string. Then what we'll be doing is we'll be just finding there the selected category from there. So what we'll be doing is we'll be rendering a condition once again like set selected categories. That should be equals to, we'll be mapping from the previous values. So we'll be having the previous, that should be equals to of the format of the string array. So we'll be having the string array inside the previous formats. And then what we'll be doing is first we'll be having the previous dot find. So first we will find all of the records from the previous categories. From there, we'll be having the P inside that, the parent category or like previous category. So if we find this category over here, like P dot or like P is equals to the value, then what we would be doing is we would be removing it from there, because what we are doing here is we are just defining the handle select to all of those chips. So what we'll be doing here, so we'll be having the condition like previous dot find. If we find this category, then we need to deselect it, or like we need to remove this from array. And if we do not find it, then what we'll be doing, so then we'll be pushing to the array of the selected categories. So we have the previous dot find, we have the P equals to the value, and then what we will be doing is we will be having the previous dot filter. Like if we already find this inside the selected categories, then we will be filtering out this. So we'll be having the filter of the category once again, like the category. Then what we'll be doing is equals to the category, not equals to the value. So that will be a very simple condition with that. Or else what we'll be doing is we would be having the new array of first there would be the previous categories, and then we'll be having the new category that we are getting from the value. So this will be very simple function with that. So this will be very simple array. So if we just save, if we just move on into the application, so here you can see once we will just click any of the category, then you can see now the technology is being selected. Once we will just click on the sports, then the sports. So then you can see as we have defined the selected, so this filter is working perfectly fine. So if we find this category inside the selected categories, then that should be equal to the true, and that's its behavior. And now on the on press, what we'll be doing is we'll be having the handle select. And inside this handle select as well, if we do not find the category, then we are pushing to the array. But if we find this category already inside the selected categories, then we are removing it from there. So like now you can see once we are clicking on the technology, then you can see now the technology is being removed from the selected categories. So that's the logic for this. And now we'll be fixing the linking issues later after we have created everything. So now you can see inside this API into the news API. So here, if we select any category like this, like if we select multiple categories, business, entertainment, environment, and then you can see the URL would be changed. First the URL, API key, then you can see category equals to the business, the entertainment, and the environment. So the URL would be changed. So we need to add all values here. So that's why we have used here the array of the categories. And now what do we want to do? So here we have the categories, and then we'll be having the refresh button as well after the categories. So we'll be having the refresh button. We can use the button from the React Native paper because this will provide us the default style buttons. So we can have the button, and with the button, we can use the button over here, and we can just provide some text as well inside this button. So what we would be doing is we can provide here the text of the refresh. We have the refresh, and after that we need to provide on press as well. So on clicking of that button, now we need to send an API request to this news data. And with the on press, we can have the handle press or handle submit. So we can use the handle press, and we can define that function over here. We can have the handle press, that should be equals to a function, very simple function. And from there, we'll be fetching an API request. So this will be an asynchronous function. So here we need some styles as well. Like we can provide the icon, that should be equals to, we can have the sync. And the icon would be available from the React Native vector icons that we have installed during the installation of the React Native paper. And then we can also provide the label styles as well. If we have the label style, that would also be an object containing the values. So the label styles will be having the font size. That should be equals to, we can give the font size of 14 would be enough for us. And then we can provide the margin as well. So the margin from all of the sides, that should be equals to the auto. And then after that, we can provide some more styles to the button as well, like the width as well. So we can provide the button, and we can provide the max width of the 400. We have the max width, and then we can also provide the padding. So we don't want any padding. And then we can have the height, or like we can have the max height. That should be equals to, we can give the 40. So that should be the properties of the button. So if we save, if we again move on into the button, and then we can provide the style property as well. And that should be equals to, we can have the styles.button property. So if we save, if we move on into the application, then you can see now we have here the refresh button as well. So now you can see now this button is also looking good. And then we can just provide here the custom mode for the button as well, because the mode is not looking good. So we can give the mode. We have so many modes. We have the contained. Then you can see now we have the mode of the contained. And then we can change the background color as well. We have the mode, we have the contained with the tonal like this. This is also looking good. So you can apply the mode according to your own preference, because I'm not very good in this styling. So we have the mode outline, and this is also looking good. And then we can remove this here. We can use here the elevated as well. So the elevated button will also look good. So the elevated will give you some shadows as well with that. So here we have this button as well. So now you can see this button is also looking good. And then I think the mode outline would be good enough for me, but you can change according to you as well. And then in the styles, what we'd be doing. So here we have the style, and then we can give the text. I think text color is there inside the label. So we can give the color. That should be equals to, we have the theme property. So we have already imported the use theme. So we can use the theme property here. So we can have the const, we can have the theme. That should be equals to the use theme that we have defined the theme of our application. So we have the color equals to, we can have the theme dot, we have the fonts, I think. So we can give the theme dot colors dot, we have here, I think primary color would be okay. So if we save, and you can just play around with these things as well. So you can give the colors according to your preference. So I will now remove the color from here. So now you can see now this is my button. And now what do we need to do? So once I will just click on this button, then we need to move on, and then we need to fetch all of the news according to the filters. So what we'll be doing is, here we have the handle press function. First, we can just remove these red lines from there. And for that, we can move on into the top of this application. And for now, and only for now, we would be using here the TypeScript, like we have the TS, we have here the no check. So it will do not check any type errors inside this application with the no check text. So we have the TS no check. So now you can see now the red lines has been gone, but we'll be fixing the red lines here after the component has been built. So I'm not using the theme, so I'm removing this as of now. So here we have the handle press, and inside that what we would be doing is we would be just fetching the details of all of those news. So how we can do that? So first we need all of these categories inside that. So what we will be doing is we will be having the const, we have the URL, that should be equals to, we can give the URL here, like we can have, I think we can move on here. So we have this URL over here, we have the HTTP this, like this URL would be okay. So we have this URL over here, and this API key is, you can provide your own API key, and do not store API key directly over here, and use it inside the environment variable as always. So use it inside the environment variables. So I'll also be using it inside the environment, but as of now we have defined here the constant. We have here the API key, so we can just paste that over here. And after the API key, then you can see now we are fetching the categories and the countries as well. So I'm not adding the filters for the country or the language, because I'm adding the by default countries here. Like we can provide the India, we can provide the US, Germany, Denmark, Egypt. So we can provide any country that we want. So I'm now providing the country equals to the India. Then you can see after the API key, we have the country equals to the India, and then we can give the language to the English. So here we have the language equals to the English. So we can just copy that here. We can just copy that here. So we have here the country equals to the IN, language equals to the EN. And after that, now what we would be doing is we would be just adding all of those categories. So then we'll be having the categories inside that. So again, we can add here the condition again, like the condition which is happening in my mind would be equals to, we can just find the selected categories first. Like if we have the selected categories dot length greater than 0, then only we need to do something. So then only what we would be doing is, I think we can use the category. We can just return something like category would be equals to, we have here again, we can add the condition, like again we can have the condition of selected categories. We have the selected categories dot, we can have here the join. So we can join all of those categories with the comma. So we can use the join with that, and then we can just we can use the join with that. So if we just save, so what join will do, it will join all of these categories with the comma. Like if you have two categories like the technology and the business, so it will just join both of them with a comma in the strings. So that would be the URL. So first I would be seeing if the URL is being generated is okay or not. So if I will now move on into the application, first I will now clear the console because it is very poor looking. We can clear the terminal. We can click on the refresh. Then you can see the language equals to the EN, and this is equals to the false, and that's because we haven't added anything inside these filters. So we can add any filters like this, politics, health, and the business. So if we just click on the refresh, then you can see now we have the category as well. We have the category that should be equals to technology, sports, politics, health, and the business. And what we would be doing is, I think we can just check here as well, like when the selected categories dot length is greater than 0, then we need to do this. Or else what we would be doing is we'd be providing an empty string, because we don't want the category as well. So if we just remove everything from there, then you can see if we just click on the refresh, then you can see if we just click on the refresh, now we don't have the category inside that. But here we have the end. So the end is provided here. So we can remove this end over here, and we can use the end here with that. So that's how we can use the categories inside that. So if we just click on the clear terminal, save again, refresh again, then if we do not provide any category, then it would be selected as the all categories. But if we provide the category like the business, then you can see now the category equals to the business. So everything is working perfectly fine. So now the URL is correct, and we are getting the exact data inside the URL. And now the next thing would be, now we want to make a request to the newsdata.io to get all of the news data, and then we'll render the news data inside that. So what we'll be doing is we'll be using the fetch from the JavaScript, and the fetch API is globally available inside the JavaScript. But if you want to use any other package for the HTTP request like the Axios or any other request, then you can use that. So here I'll be using the await. That should be equals to the fetch because that's a promise and we need to wait for this task. So here we have the fetch, and then we need to pass in the URL here. And here we don't need to provide any credentials or like the body data or anything because that's a simple GET request. And after that, we'll just get the response. We'll get the response inside this response variable. And then we need to convert this response inside the JSON. So we'll be returning the response with the JSON formatted. And after we'll be having the JSON response, there will be having the then statement once again. And inside this then statement, then we'll be having the data. So then we'll be having the exact data with that. And after that, what we'll be doing is we can just log the data as of now. We can have the console.log the data over here. And then if we get an error, then we can again use the catch here. Or like we can just remove this as of now. We can use the try catch block here. So we can have the try. We have the catch. If we get an error, then we'll log that error as of now. So inside the try, we can just use this await. Like this, we have the console.log. That should be the data. And inside the catch, if we get an error inside that, then what we'll be doing is we'll be just logging the error. The console.log with the error with that. So I think we need to add here the bracket. So if we save, if we move on into the application once again, so if we just reload the app once again for having the fresh data, so you can see we can select the filter of the technology business. We can click on the refresh. Then I think we are waiting for this task to approve. So now you can see now we're getting the exact data of the news. So now you can see inside the log window, there's a very long description of the news. So we are getting all of the data inside the news as well. So the error was the previous error. So here we have the next page. So there is a concept of the next page inside this request. So it will just give you the data of the first 10 records. So we need to get the other data once we will reach at the end of this layout. So that's why they have provided the next page key. And then inside the results, then we are getting all of the data of the categories. So what we'll be doing is we'll be having the use state here. So inside the top, we can have the state. Once again, you can have the use state snippet. We can have the news data, set news data. And then we can just move on and we can just remove this console.log. We can use here this set news data. And that should be equals to we have the data.results property because we have all the data inside the data.results. So we have the data.results inside that. So if we save, if we move on into the application, if we just log the data here, we have the console.log. That should be equals to the news data. So after we are getting the news data, then we'll be rendering the list. So I think the server has been stopped by mistake. So we can again move on with the npm run Android. So it will open directly on the Android device. So here we have the npm run Android and we have the starting metro bundler, and we need to wait for it until it recreates the entire application inside this Android. So we can click on the R to reload this, or we can just click on the A to open this again. So I think it didn't open with that. We can just press the R to reload once again. So now you can see now this app is working fine. And now you can see initially we don't have any data. So we have here the empty array with that. So that's good because initially we don't want to render the news. Then once I will select any filter like the technology, the business, if we just click on the refresh, then you can see now we are getting the data inside that. So here you can see now we are getting all of the data. And if you want to just identify the keys of the data as well, you can press the first element and then you can just find the keys of that object. You have the object dot keys. So you can find the keys from that object inside the news data. So if we save, if we move on into the application once again, so now you can see having the title, we have the link, we have the keywords, we have the creator, we have the video URL, we have the description, we have the content, we have the publish date, we have the image URL. So these are the keys that we can use. So you can just make these keys as a separate types object. So again, we can move on into, I think we can move on into a new folder. We have the types, or we can have the utils. And inside that we can have the types.ts, and inside that we can just have all of these inside the types. So here we have the description. So what we would be doing is we can just move on and we can just provide the type. So we have the type of the news data. That should be equals to a type. We can provide all of those types here. Like we have the title, we can have the title. That should be equals to, or like all of the data would be the string. So then what we would be doing is we would be just having all the data here. So we need to add everything here like description, content, published date, image URL, source ID, category, the country, the language as well. So we would be having the type of the string as the by default type. And then we can just change that here. Like this would be equals to, we have the link, URL keywords would be, I think, the array. So we have here the array of the string array. And then I think the category would also be, I think, the string. So we can have the category would be equals to the string. Then we have the country, source ID, and everything is there working perfectly fine. And now we can move on and we can just export this type as well. So we have the export type of the news data. So that should be the news data. And then we can move on into, I think, the home. And then we can just provide the type of the news data here. News data type. And here as well, we can provide the type. And here as well, we can have the data.results as the type of the news data. And now you can see now everything would work perfectly fine. And now we can just restart the server once again with the npm run Android, and then everything should work perfectly fine. And the last thing for this home screen would be equals to, we need to render the list of all of those news. Now we have the data of the news. Now we need to render the list. So for the list, we can use the flat list from the React Native. So here now we have the data, and now we need to render the data inside the flat list. So for rendering the data inside the flat list, what we would be doing is we need to create here a render item and the flat list. So the flat list is just like a list that we need to render, and it is by default scrollable list. So what we would be doing is, here we have here the chip after the categories. Then after the chip, then we'll be having the flat list component. So here we can have here the button of the refresh, and after the refresh, after this view as well, we can have the flat list. So here we have the flat list from the React Native, and the flat list is very easy to use. So we need to render two properties, the data and the render item. So the data is the array of the data. Like we can provide the array of the data, like we have the array of the data here, like we have the news data. We have the news data inside that. We have the array of the news data. So that should be the array. And after that, what we would be doing is, after we are having the data inside that, then we need to add here another property, which is the render item. So the render item is just like a renderable item, like a iterator. So the render item is like, it is like a child item of the flat list. So for each render of the flat list, it will render the render item. So in the render item, we'll get the data. So that should be equals to a component. So for the render item, we can provide a custom component inside that, and we can define that component inside this components directory. So that will be equals to, we can give the components equals to, we have here the, like the card item. So we'll be using the cards with that, and we have the TSX with that. So for the render item, what we would be doing is we need to provide the card item. So now inside this render item, now what do we need to do? So the render item is a prop which takes an item for the data and render it to the list. So for each iterator of the data, like we have the data of the array. So for each iterator, it will just collect the data from it, and it will render the data to the render item prop. And from the render item, we are generating the card item. So that is very easy concept. So we have the render item. That should be equals to, again, a function which will just return the card item component. So in the functional parameter, in the callback inside the render item, we will get the exact data. And in the data, we get the item property as well from the data. So we get the properties of the index, the item, and the separator. So we get the item. And after that, what we will be doing is we'll be rendering the card item with that. We have the card item, and now we need to specify all of these props for the card item. So for the props, what we would be needing for the props. So now inside the card item, now we need to provide all of those props, and the props would be equals to the type of the news data. So we have defined the news data. So the type would be equals to the news data inside that. And now we can move on, and then we can provide all of those props, like the category. That should be equals to the item.category. And then we can move on, and then we have the content. That should be equals to the item.content. So I will now fast forward it. So I've provided all of those props to the card item component. So we have the card item category, we have provided the item.category, we have the content, we have the country. So there are so many items that we have provided. So now we have provided all props to the card item. So now you can see all of the props that we have. I've provided all of those props, and you can also provide it. And now we can move on to the card item, and then we can just render the text of the card item inside that. Like we have the text. So first we can just render here the title. So here we can just have here the title over here to check if everything works fine or not. So we have here the props on dot title. So if we save, if we move on into the application, then you can see if we reload the page, then we should be seeing the title inside the list. So undefined is not an object. Okay, so we can move on and we can remove this console.log over here. We can just reload once again. So like now you can see if we just move on into the technology or business or politics or health or the sports, if we just click on the refresh, then we would be seeing the data over here. So like now you can see now we are having the data inside that, like life has sprinkled magic on me, the NetWest poised to report the biggest profits. So now you can see now we are getting all of those details inside that. So now we have all of the titles here. And now the next thing is now what we want to do is now we can just move on, and first we need to provide the styles for the flat list. So for the flat list, we have here the flat list would be having the styles, like we can give the flex property that should be equals to the 1. So it will take by default flex equals to the 1. Then we can give the height as well, that should be equals to the auto. And we can just move on and we can just provide the flex here, like we have this style that should be equals to, we have, I think we can give the styles dot, we have the flat list. And now we can move on to the card item component. So now inside the card item, so we only be using the title, the image and the description. So now what we would be doing is we would be using the card from the React Native paper. So we can move on to React Native paper. We can select for the card. So now you can see these are the cards that we can use. We can use this card. This card looks amazing. And we have so many examples with that inside that. So we can use the card approach. So what we would be doing is we would be just returning a component of the pressable, because the card would be pressable. And after that, inside that, so the pressable is just like it will provide you that own press function with that. And we have the pressable, and inside that we can use the card. So we can use the card from React Native paper. So we can import that from the React Native paper. That should be the card. So the card would be there. So you can have the card, and then we need the card here. So the card would be equals to a wrapper. And then we need to provide some styles for the card, like we can have the card item, or like we have the card. We have the card for, we can give the margin of the vertical. So the margin vertical would be 10, and we can give here the background color as well, like the background color. That should be equals to, again, we can use the theming. So we can have the const, we can have the theme. That should be equals to the use theme. So the use theme is there, and then we can use the use theme from the React Native paper only. So here we have the theme, and now inside this card, then we can use the style, and that should be equals to the styles.card. So we have missed the background color. So the background color would be equals to, we can give here the theme. I think the theme is not available here because it is defined inside the card item. So we can just remove that background color over here, or we can just directly remove the card styles from here. We can just apply the styles here, because these are just the two styles that we need, like the margin of the vertical of the 10, and then we can give the background color. That should be equals to, we can give the theme dot, we can give here the colors, we can give the elevation dot, we can give here the level 5. So that would be the background color for that card. So like the card would be having the cover as well. So we have the card dot cover. So here we have the cover inside that card. So the cover would be a self-closing tag. And after that, we need to add the border radius for the cover. So the cover is just like it covers the cards. We can give the border radius to the 10, and then we can give the source as well. So we can give the source. So cover would be like, and so we can give the source image for the cover. So if you don't know about the card cover, then you can again move on into the card cover, and then you will find this cover. So here is an image inside the cover. So the source is will be equals to, we can give an object. It will accept the properties like the URI. That should be equals to, we can have the props dot the image URL, like the image URL for the source. So if we save, if we move on into the application, so here you can see now for every news item, we are having the card cover. We are having the cover for all of those cards here. So now you can see now these are all looking good. We have here the sports as well. We have here, and now after that, now what we can do, so we can give the title as well for the card. So we can have the card dot title with the card dot title, and then we can give the title prop. That should be equals to, we can give the title of, that should be equals to, we can have props dot title. We have the props dot title. we can have the subtitle as well. So the subtitle would be equals to, now we would be just splitting the one line of the description. So now inside the subtitle, we need to add the description, but we need to add only single line of the description. And once the user clicks on any card, then he should be moved on to a different page of the news overview. So we have the subtitle that should be equals to, we can have the props dot, we have the description dot, we can have the split. So we can split the description from, I think, a next line. So from the next line, and then that should be equals to 0th element from there. So we only need the first line inside that. And after that, I think we can have the title with the number of lines that should be equals to only 1. So if we save, if we move on into the application, so here you can see now we are getting the details of all of those news. So now you can see now this news application is looking amazing. So now you can see now this application is looking perfectly amazing. So you can see all of those news data is here. Now you can see we are getting the top 10 news over here, and then you can see we are so many things. And if we just remove some topics from there, like the sports, we have here the technology, we have here only the business. If we just click on the refresh, then we would be seeing only the business related post. Like now you can see we only have the business related post here. So that's working perfectly fine inside that. So now you can see now the list is there, and now it is rendering in a good way. But here is a flaw, that inside this list, we only have here the 10 elements inside that. So we only have top 10 news inside that, because this API just provides you the top 10 records for the first API request. So here what you need to do is you need to get a next page key. So this provides you a next page key as well, in which you can fetch another records with the same data, with the same filters. So what you need to do is you can move on again into the home.tsx. So here, so inside the URL, now we need to just modify the URL as well for every request. So first thing is, now we want to just get the next page and we want to store it. So for storing it, we use the use state once again. So here we have the use state, we have the snippet of the next page, and we have the next page, and initial value would be an empty string. And after that, now what we would be doing is, once we are just fetching all of those details, we have the set news, and then we are having the set news data. So after that, this would be equals to a different function. And inside that, first we need to set the news data. Then we need to add the set the next page data. We have the set the next page data. And the next page would be equals to, we have the data dot next page. So we have the next page. And after that, now what we would be doing is we need to modify the URL. So now for the URL modification for the next page data, you need to move on into the documentation. And there you will find that we need to add the next page key here. Like here inside that, we are adding the URL. Inside the payload of the request, then you can see we have the page that should be equals to the next page. So for the page, we need to provide here the page here. The page would be equals to the key. So we need to provide the page key for the next page string. So we can move on into the URL. Here we have the URL. And after that, after we have done this, then we need to add another condition. Like now we have the another condition over here. And inside this condition, now what we would be doing is, first we will check when we have the next page data, like when we have the next page dot length is greater than 0. So when we have something inside the next page, then we need to do something. Then we would be having a new parameter inside the URL that should be equals to, again, ampersand page that should be equals to, again, the next page. So we'll be having the next page with that. Or what we would be doing is, instead what we would be doing in the else case, so in the else we will be having, I think we don't need to provide anything, so that will be a default string. So if we save, so what we are doing here, so we don't need this. So when the next page dot length is greater than 0, then the page equals to the next page, or we are having the empty string. And here as well, once we are just moving on into the end, we are having the set next page equals to the data dot next page. So the final thing is, once we will just move on into the end of the list, then we need to fire an event for the next page. And then after that, we need to just make a new request. So what you can do, so we have the flat list. So we have here the event of the on and received, I think. Yes, on and reached. And here we can use again, I think, and here as well, we can use, I think, the handle submit, like the handle submit or like the handle press. So that would be okay. I think so. I think that should work. So we have the handle press and we have something like, we do not need to provide any parameter over here. So we do not need to provide parameters. So that should be equals to handle press. So we can just call that handle press over here. So if we save, if we move on into the application once again, so like now you can see, if I will now just refresh the page. So first refresh would be okay. Like now you can see now we have the 10 request, but on the end again we don't have any request. Like now you can see now request data. Oh, I got the error. We are just setting the news data as the data dot results. So every time we get the 10 new records, so it will just set the news data to the 10 new records and the previous data would be lost. So now what do we need to do here? So we need to use here the previous again. Like here we'll be having the previous first. Like first we need to store the previous and then only we need to store the data dot results. We can return an array. First we'll be receiving the previous, so first we'll be having the previous data, then we will be just pulling out all of this data from the data dot results, and these are the spread operator that you can use inside the JavaScript. So now you can see now our application has been refreshed. We can just click the two new topics, we can just click on the refresh. So now you can see now we are having all of the news inside that. We have here the news inside that, and then you can see once we will just reach the end, then you will be seeing that we'll be making another request to the handle submit function. Then you can see now first we have the previous data, and after that only then we have the new data inside that. So everything is working perfectly fine. So now you can see now our home screen has been completed with that. So now the home screen is completed, and now we need to just create two more screens. The first will be the overview screen of the news. Once we will just click on any news inside that, then we need to show all of the details of that news. So that will be the thing. And after that, the second thing would be that we need to do is we need to just create a modification inside the so now you can see now this home screen has been completed, and now the next thing is that we want to work on is the news overview. That once we will just click on any news, then we need to just move on into that news detail page, and from that detail page we can just save or unsave that news. So that will be the logic. So with that, our home screen has been completed, and now the next thing that we want to achieve is once we will click on any of the news item, then we should be moved on to the news overview screen, which is registered inside the navigator. So here we have registered this tag screen, which is the news overview. So once we will just click any of the news item from the cards, then we should be moved on to the news overview, and then we need to show all of the details of that selected news inside the news overview screen. So how can we do that? So here you can see inside the home component, we are using the card item component. So we have the card item, which you are rendering inside the flat list. So each card item, so inside each card item, you can see we have rendered the pressable. So why we have rendered the pressable? Because once we will just press on any item, once we will just click on any news item, then we need to fire an event, and that event will call a function, and that function will navigate to the news overview screen. So that will be the process. So here inside the pressable, so we can just add a callback function on a new prop, which is the on press. So we have the on press function, which will be just called whenever we will press on any of the news item card, because the card is being wrapped inside the pressable. So you can see we can add a callback here like we do in the React. So we can use the alert. So here we can do the alert, and then we can just write any message like the pressed. So you can see once we will just press any of the card inside that, like suppose this card, then you can see the new alert pop-up will be appearing, and then you can see it has the OK as well. So you can see once we will just press any of the news item, then we can just show the alert. So if we can show the alert on pressing of the new item, then we can also just move on to the different screen as well. But how can we move on to the different screen? So to move between the multiple screens inside the React Native, so inside each screen that we have registered inside the navigator, it contains a by default props of something like route and the navigation. So each screen contains a by default prop of the route and the navigation. So we need to know more about this. So we can move on into the Chrome. We can click on the guest mode or any mode that you want, and then we can just move on again into the React Native navigation. And then you can see inside the navigation, we can just click on the React Native navigation. We can again click on the read documents, and then you can see we have a link of the moving between the screens. And then you can see they have provided us all of the details regarding that. Then you can see they have given us the HTML template as well, like how can we do this inside an HTML. And I know we all know that. So we write the anchor tag, we write the ref prop, and then we write the file name like the details.html, and then we add some text like go to details. And once we will just click on this anchor tag, then we are moved on to the new file. So that's how it works inside the React navigation as well. So what we will do is, like you can see that I've told you earlier, that each screen inside the React Native navigation that we have registered contains a navigation prop inside that. So each screens contain the navigation prop, and it also contains the route prop as well. So that's how it works. So inside the navigation, we have a function of the navigate. So we can call the props.navigation, and then we have the function of the navigate, and then we need to write the name of that screen like we do here. Like you can see, if we have the detail screen component, and here you can see inside the props, we by default have the navigation property, and inside that navigation, they are also just moving on to a different screen, like you can see navigation. So we have a method of the navigate in which we write the name of that screen which is registered. So like that, we can move onto our navigator as well. So here you can see we have the screens registered like the news overview. So what we can do, so we can move on into again inside the card item, and then we can just pass the prop of the navigation inside that. And once we will just click on this pressable, once the pressable fires, then we can just call the navigate function and we can move on into the news overview screen. So that is very simple. So you can see we have the navigation inside that, and then you can see we have another one link here, which is the passing the parameters, because we need to also pass the parameters as well, like the whole news details. So we can move on into the passing the parameters, and this contains two steps. Like you can see there are the two pieces into this. So first we need to just call the navigate method from the navigation with the name of the route name, and inside the second parameter, so if you want to send some data, then you need to add the second parameter, but it should be an object, so that should be the key value pairs. And the second method is once you will just move on to a different screen, then you need to read the data as well. And to read the data, we have the route property inside that. The screen contains the route and the navigation inside that. So with the route, you can have the params property, and then from the params, you can just point out or you can just destructure the properties that you want, like the item ID and the other params. So it is very simple. So I'm going to show you this from the scratch. So let's see all of that in action. So as we've discussed, that each screen which is registered inside the navigator contains a by default prop of the navigation and the route. So we need to add those things inside every screen component, like the home, we have here the saved, we have here the news overview and all of that. So we need to add the type as well. So for that, we can move on into the types.ts, and here we can just declare their types. So here we can just declare their types. So what we can do is we can have the export, we can have here the type, and that should be equals to the component navigation prop. So these are the component navigation props which will be available inside that. We have the component navigation props, and this type will contain first the property will be equals to the navigation. So we have the navigation, and the navigation will be having the property of the navigation prop. So the navigation prop property, it is a type which is available inside the React navigation package. So we can use here the navigation prop which is available inside the React Native navigation, and after that we need to add the type T. So the type T would be equals to the route of the React Native. So that is what the navigation is. So we have the navigation, and then it contains the navigation prop of this route. So we have the route components here. So the navigation is the first thing, and the second thing is the actual route parameter which will be used for getting the params. So we have here the route prop inside the React Native navigation once again, and then say we need to add the route because this is also a route screen. So now we have defined the type inside that, and now we can move on into the home screen where we need to accept this type. So what we can do is here we are receiving the props, but here we need to add the type. So the props will be having of type of the component navigation prop, and this should be imported from the utils file. So here we have the utils, and there you can see we are importing this type over here. And after that, you can see inside this card item, so I've just reduced the items here because we only need the items with the description, the image URL, the title and the content. So we only need these 4 items as of now, because if we move on into the card item component, so here you can see inside this card, inside each card which is rendered here, we only have the image URL because we need to render the image, and then we have the title and the description. And inside the news overview as well, so once we'll be moving on into the news overview, so we only need the content prop after the title and the description and the image URL. So inside the news overview, we only be needing the content prop which contains the whole content of this news, like the title, image and everything with that. So now what we will be doing is we'll be accepting the navigation prop inside the card item component. And how can we do that? So here when we are calling the card item, so we can just pass the navigation prop over here. And I'm going to tell you why that we need this. So we have the navigation that will be equals to we have the props dot navigation that we have. And now inside the card item, we need to accept the prop of the navigation as well. And here as well, we need to modify the data because we only need some of the data here. So we can just move on and we can just remove the news data type. And then we can just declare the type separately here. We have the type, which is really equals to the props. And then we need the title. That should be equals to the string. And then we need the image URL. We have the image URL. And after that, we need here, I think, after that, we need the description. The description. And after that, we need here the content inside that after the description. And then the last thing is the navigation that we have just sent. So we have the navigation, which will be of the type of, as we have discussed, like the navigation prop, of the React Native route. So this will be of type of the navigation. So here what we'll be doing is once we will just click on the press, once we will just click on any card, so the on press will be called, and on the on press will be moving on to the news overview screen. So that will be the functionality. So what we'll be doing is props will be equals to the type of the props inside that, as we have defined here. And after that, we can just move on into the pressable. We can just fire a function of the on press, and inside that we can just call the handle press. So we have the handle press with that. So we can just declare that function over here as well, like the const, we have the handle press, that will be equal to a function which will be pointed to this on press. So once the press will be called, the handle press will be called as a callback. And after that, we have the handle press here. So what we'll be doing is we'll be having the props dot navigate, as we have seen earlier, that the props dot navigation dot navigate method. So we have the navigate method to move on to the different screen. And now inside this navigate, we need to move on into the navigator, and then we need to copy the name of the news overview screen. So we have the screen name, which is the news overview. So we need to move on into the news overview screen. So we need to copy that name, and then we can move on into the card item once again, and then we can just pass that name over here. So with that, we'll be moving on to the news overview screen once we will press on any card. So that's how the navigation works. So we have the navigate method, which navigates to a different screen once we will just call this navigate method. So after that, as we have seen inside the documentation, so if we need to send any additional data with that, then we can just pass an object after that. And that object will contain some data like the title property, and this will be equals to the props.title. The same will be equals to the description. This will be the props.description. And same will be equals to the image URL. That will be the props.image URL once again. And we need the content as well. That should be equals to again the props.content. So these are the 4 things that we need inside the news overview. So if we just reload the whole application, if we just move on into the emulator once again,